Despicable Me 3. Yikes. So I mentioned this before in this review series. I saw this one in the theater, and this was the movie that made me vow to never watch an Illumination film ever again, or one of these movies in this franchise, which I didn't really keep true to. I did not watch Rise of Gru. Now I'm rewatching these movies for you guys, so I can watch the next Minions in July. And I also did watch Sing 2 in theaters, broke my track record, saw Mario, saw uh, Migration, and I enjoyed Mario okay enough, and I really liked Migration, so I don't regret that decision. I feel like Illumination is kind of changing a little bit, and we'll see what happens with all that. But I can see why this movie made me quit this franchise. This movie is awful. Now, there are some things I do like about this movie that I really couldn't have said before. Which the main thing I like about this movie is Trey Parker's character, which is this villain that was a former child star, and basically he lives in that as an adult, and he dances around to 80s music and pops out 80s references. As someone who is very much a fan of 80s pop culture, that stuff's funny, and there's some fun to be had with that. I don't think they pushed that far enough, but we'll talk about that in my negatives. But yeah, I like that, and I also think the animation had gotten slightly better. Something to know, even though Illumination's animation is never its strong suit. Notice why I do not note the animation in these movies as a huge critique in these things, because there's nothing of note here. And then I think all the voice actors have become more entwined with their characters, so they were all pretty good here, except for Steve Carell, who plays his twin brother as well, which is just, we'll talk about that. Yeah, so other than that, I fucking hate this movie. I think the biggest thing about this movie is the twin brother plotline is such a trope in pop culture of just, we've ran out of ideas. And I think what makes it worse here is this is not we ran out of ideas. Because at this point in this franchise is only at its third movie. Yeah, we did a spin-off, but this is its third movie. You should not have run out of ideas so quickly in a movie franchise that's about supervillains and spies. Do you know how many James Bond movies they've made? There's infinite possibilities with that. They have written so many James Bond books, movies, and games out there in pop culture. How is it that this franchise has already run out of ideas? So it's just the point to the obvious. It's laziness. This whole movie spews of just laziness, where the twin brother plotline, very lazy trope. They have the same actor doing the same voice, only way more annoying, and he's just an awful character with no real intrigue or personality to him. You have that, to a bit of laziness. You have the laziness of how this movie just didn't pick a plot line. It just went with so many of them that were just bad. Just a lot of things here. It just felt like a lot of this movie's first draft of a screenplay, where they're like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this, and they just shoved all them in here, when some of them actually were good enough plot lines that they could have been their own movie. Like the plot line here about the Minions going on strike. How cool would that have been if that was the Minions movie, right? The Minions don't like that Groot turn good, so they go on strike. It's also just okay, why is this happening in the third movie? It serves no purpose. It's just to get the Minions out of the story. But so they just do gags. None of it's funny. None of it's good. I think the one that should have been a plot line fleshed out into a movie, which is the plot of Lucy trying to connect with the girls after becoming their new mom in the last movie, which is actually a good plot line. That the first movie is Gru becoming these girls' dads. The second movie is this Gru meeting her, and then that dynamic. And I think that would have been smart as a third movie. Okay, now she's the new mom. Let's play with that. I think the plot of this movie should have been, hey, this villain that Trey Parker plays has some beef against Gru, and so he kidnaps Gru, and now it's up to Lucy and the girls to save him. And while that, they can go on a little bonding journey like the three girls and Lucy. That should have been the plot line of this movie, but instead it's the subplot that doesn't really actually get resolved at all in the movie. I mean, it kind of does, but it doesn't. You have the plot line, like I said, the minions in this movie. You have the plot line of the girl trying to find a unicorn. You have the plot line of Drew trying to get Gru back into villainy, except he doesn't really want to do it, so there's not really even a conflict there. Like, the conflict should have been like, oh, Gru wants to get back to villainy, but also realizes he shouldn't because that's not his life now. I mean, there's so much. He gets fired from his job. There's all these plots that I just don't understand why any of it's here. It's just, and even the villain like doesn't get fleshed out that much. Like the villain's like, oh, I guess they canceled his show, but they don't even give a reason why can't they cancel the show. Maybe it should have been like some backstory where it was an unjust cancellation and it harmed him in some way, and so now he's out for revenge. I mean, there also should have been more gags about him actually going after actual people involved with the show. Maybe they were like parodies of actors. I don't know, there's so many things you could do here, but it's all just laziness and sleaziness and just a cash grab of nothingness. It is amazing to me that they were this lazy with this movie. Because again, they're only 3 movies deep, not counting the spin-off, of a spy villain movie franchise where you could do so much with these things that you didn't need to be this damn lazy. There's just no excuse for how utterly terrible this movie is. Just no excuse for it whatsoever. Like, what are we doing here? Why is this movie the way it is? I absolutely despise this movie because it's one thing to be lazy with your movie. It's another thing to just make the laziness apparent and make it like something when you're watching the movie that you can actively tell no one gave a shit making. 0 out of 10. That's the rating this movie deserves because, you know, while I can say there's a couple good things about it, this is a movie where you can tell they actively have contempt for the audience to make the laziness this apparent.